Hey, church family. As we get ready for Commitment Sunday on April 14th, we want to make sure that we have answered any lingering questions that you might have. And so any questions you have can be sent to uncharted@sloanslake.church. And in the next 10 minutes or less, I want to walk through some of the questions that we have already received. The first question we usually get is, what is Uncharted trying to accomplish? Well, as I've shared before and will continue to share in each week's message, first and foremost, this is a spiritual journey. Our goal is not to raise money first, it's to raise discipleship. And so our first goal is that 100% of those who call this their church home, who watch online, and even our guests would commit to take a 2-year journey where they see what Jesus wants to do in and through their lives. Secondarily, we need to raise an awareness of and a new level of vision and fund that transformational ministry. As we've said in other places, we believe it will take $1.4 million to fully fund the transformational ministry Jesus wants us to have over the next 2 years. The next question then is, why is this new vision and this campaign and improvement so important? Well, your leaders believe that while we have had an amazing 131-year legacy, that the best days are still in front of us. We believe that the best is yet to come. But prior to this season, we entered into a time where the ministry was going into a little bit of a decline. Improvements hadn't been made, our buildings started to age, and we lost footing in our community where we should have been having a transformational impact and sharing the hope that can only be found in Jesus. And so our reasoning is what we've put on the church walls for the last month or two. 298,749 people who live within a 5-mile radius of our church do not have the hope that can only be found in Jesus. This is marriages that are missing that hope. Parents who are sending their kids off to school, praying and hoping against hope that their kids will be safe. But deep down, they don't have that relationship with Jesus. So we believe God is giving us 298,749 reasons why it's important that we see a new day of ministry and elevate what Jesus is doing right here through this church. Now, the most common question, the most asked question in this season has been, who decides what gets prioritized? Well, there's a 2-part answer to that. First and foremost, we are using a new philosophy of funding called the One Fund. So everything that used to go to multiple different buckets, whether it was your giving to the church, to Faith Promise, or to random fundraisers or events, would now all come under the ministry fund. That ministry fund is voted upon at our annual business meeting by the congregation. It's presented by the elders for ratification, so everybody gets a say in that regard. Beyond that, though, we have 2 additional priorities. First and foremost is activating our ministry fund. But then we also want to begin advancing the ministry that happens in and through this church. For one example, staffing. Right now, I am the only full-time person in our church. Pastor Leonore works 8 hours, give or take, in an average week. And we have a few volunteers who lovingly and thankfully give of their time to make this ministry happen. But we are not staffed to even meet current needs, let alone expanding ministry. And so we want to fill the staff position that has been lost. And we also want to add in an additional staff pastor and then someone who can be in the office doing administrative work. And then beyond that, we want to begin having a greater impact into our community. That's what this is all about, after all. And then after that, our last step up is to arrive. And that's all about our building and the repairs that need to be done here, as well as revitalizing this space, which is hugely strategic and important in this growing part of our community, to make sure that it is no longer an eyesore, but actually a place that people are drawn into. So that's the quick answer to that. We've also had a question come across that it seems like we have gotten outside funds, such as grants. Why can't we just keep doing that? Well, the reality is simple. God's plan to fund the church is the tithes and offerings that come from his people. We can't expect someone else to fund the ministry of the church until that base is covered. And if each of us engaged at 100%, taking our next step up on the giving ladder, we would be able to fund the transformational ministry without any additional resources. Now, the Emerge grant that we got early last year has been a huge blessing to us, but it is a fund that is limited to what it was originally given for. So it's improved our sanctuary, and it will improve our outside front yard and our kids ministry area, but that is the only way it can be used. And if you've ever done grant writing before, you know that taking or receiving or getting or chasing after all of those things, grants, it just requires an awful lot of work. We've been blessed to get the 2 we've gotten so far, but that is not a sustainable model for funding ministry, and it can only be considered icing on the cake if we are able to get others going forward. We've also had some questions about what will happen with staffing. Well, as I mentioned, we are not currently staffed to meet the needs of what we have in our existing congregation due to a staffing change that happened last month. We need to not only fill that position, but we also need to expand our staff beyond. Now, we've been talking with a person prior to our staff opening happening who we believe will make an amazing next generation's pastor for our church. Just so happens that as we've talked through this process, that person is also a gifted worship leader. And so we are in talks, and we'll be unveiling here soon a person who we believe will fit into the staff that we had. But we don't just want to bring one person on and call it good. We need to expand our staffing capabilities. And the reality is the person who's coming would be doing worship and our kids ministry, and both of those are very heavily focused in on Sunday morning. So if we're truly going to expand our ministry, we need to be able to add a person who could take over the worship role fully or the next generation's pastor role fully. We also have a lot of things that need done on the back end, and we need to rehire an administrative assistant who can help keep our staff sane and get some of the detailed work done while our pastors focus on the big picture. So we'll have some more staffing announcements coming up in the next couple weeks that we are very excited about. But we need to begin to expand that vision even beyond replacing a staff. Several people have asked, what is the One Fund? Well, the One Fund is a philosophy of how we fund ministry. So it's not the name of our budget. What we used to call our budget is our ministry fund. It's what funds ministry. But we are going to be doing that in the One Fund philosophy going forward. In the past, churches, including ourselves, have had multiple places where you could give. For us, it was the ministry fund or budget, faith promise, and then there was always other things like donut money, the Christ birthday offering, and fundraisers for individual ministries in the church. And what has typically happened in scenarios like that in churches across the board is that when one of those funds is short, people shift their giving over, and then we have a leak here, so they shift their giving, and then there's a leak here, so they shift their giving, and it's really just a game of shells. That's not what we want to do. We want to activate our ministry even better by putting all of our giving into one ministry fund, and that funds all of the ministry of the church. So the One Fund includes your previous tithes and offerings. It includes your giving to Faith Promise, which we are still going to be funding. It's just moved into the budget so that we can do it more strategically. And it includes anything that you might have given in the past to things like the Christ birthday offering or youth fundraisers or donut money or things like that. And it all goes to one fund that funds our ministry. Lastly, there's been a question about what is going to happen with the elevator fund. Well, I'm excited to announce, and you've heard me say it, but let me just reiterate, that we are moving forward with a new project in our front yard that will revitalize the whole front of the church and also provide a more ADA compliant ramp and system, which will include the ability to drive up onto the ramp, drop someone off. They have a short step up the ramp into the new door, and then there's going to be a 21-foot patio where we'll have a little bit extra space to mingle, to put some tables and chairs out, and various things like that. Because of the Emerge grant and what we had received there, in addition to the elevator fund, we are going to be funding that. But there's also about a $15,000 difference that we are going to be trusting in faith that God is going to provide through this campaign so that we cannot wait any longer. Because part of the problem with the elevator fund is it just kept waiting and waiting for more funds to arrive, and then costs continue to increase. Well, we are going to be able to provide that here in the next several weeks. In fact, Commitment Sunday, April 14th, the hope is that it will be completely done by then, and we are going to have a christening of that. We are going to celebrate together, and we are going to join together 100%, all in, ready to see what God is going to do as we lay down our sacrificial commitments for the next 2 years. I'm excited about this journey. The best days of our ministry are still ahead. God's not done yet, and He is ready to do something new in and through you. I'll see you Sunday.